Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 23rd, 2020. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's rainy, but it's also arrived. As you think about it, this is realistically the second day of the football season where you're having the 2020 NFL Draft. A lot of excitement, a lot of hopes and expectations are fulfilled tonight.
Yep.
But what will be on the field and when will it be there next?
Man, I surely hope we get it next, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Today's NFL Draft. Looking forward to getting to that. I want to make sure we give out our Veterans Crisis Line, Big C. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. Whew. They can help a lot of people now, Big C. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, we really don't understand the stress as normal human beings, what veterans have gone through in their service to this country. And many of them coming back home feeling left out, especially during this time of pandemic. When you think about struggles that veterans had prior to this, Charlton, and we know a lot of this being cooped up at home, the stay-at-home orders have really put a lot of phobia pressure on these veterans. And this is where violence occurs within the home, Charlton. And so the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is one of those numbers that is there to help, to give somebody to talk to give them a mental and emotional outlet. Unfortunately, I was watching on the news today, Charlton, where a veteran got into it with his son. And unfortunately, it became to a catastrophic event because of this, the frustration of being cooped up with the mental anguish that you've been going through. So anytime someone can see these type of problems with veterans or anybody else, don't hesitate in giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. I know everybody's worried about the pandemic, the coronavirus that's going on right now, but veterans never go away. Hopefully we can find a cure for this coronavirus, but we can't find a cure yet for those veterans who are going through emotional and mental struggles.
Yeah, and I love doing our part, Big C. Just to give out that number is 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And help is on its way. Big C, really looking forward to giving that out. Also, really proud to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T UVerse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. Just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. And sports teams, when we get it back, Big C, they'll do it too. Let real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. We have this thing that's going on in the universe. Everybody's talking about how to cure COVID-19. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the NFL Draft and how a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, but most people will have their lives changed for the most part. And I know there's a lot of good athletes out there, and they're looking for that moment for them to have that little boy, that childhood dream come true. Big C, just give me your thoughts going back to the days where the draft was coming and you're in college and there's all this excitement around you. Just give me your thoughts on what these young people are going through, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, it's changed over time, Charlton, because it's become a theatrical event. back in the day when, we didn't have cell phones and only 2 or 3 of us had a color TV and nobody, half of us didn't have a phone in our apartment.
Yeah.
You anticipated the end of your college career and you look forward to an opportunity to potentially go to an NFL team, whether you were drafted or whether you're a free agent. It was the next step in life.
Yeah.
And I think it's become a lot more overhyped than what it is because the game is still played on the field.
Yeah.
We all sit around every year annually and wait on the NFL draft spectacle to take place. It was actually a 2-day event when I came out of college years ago back in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was only a 2-day event. And now they've made it a 3-day weekend-long event. But the expectations of these young men to move into, the life after college, to hopefully take care of themselves and some of their family members and have a long and prosperous career.
Yeah, they really are. And I want to ask you a silly question. I kind of feel bad. I know this might sound dumb, but I say a lot of dumb things, it seems. I know when you're a young person, you're coming out of college, the world is really starting to open up. And then I feel bad because they always bring the girlfriend to the draft. And sometimes when you go from eating top ramen and peanut butter to maybe a few $1 million, the girlfriend might not make the draft. So your thoughts, do you bring her to the draft?
Well, I mean, when you look at these situations, and a lot of these college athletes, they've gotten through college by having the significant other to help take care of them, and a lot of them are beyond girlfriends. They've been wives and stuff.
Yeah,
so when you look at these situations, you want to go with the people that have been there when you didn't have anything to make sure that you take care of them. Because once you become a professional athlete, there's no shortage of people who want to hang around and be around you. So you have to protect and buffer yourself by having a safety net of people that you can trust so that they can kind of keep other people away from you.
Yeah, and I know there's always the talk of how you got to dance with the person that brung you, but sometimes they're out dancing with their own people. It's all fair level word, but I just kind of feel bad for sometimes. I remember when I was back in college and some guys get drafted and sometimes they change not only their zip code, they change a lot of things. Big C, it's all fair and love and war, but the sun will always shine on people who get up for it. I know with all the talk about what's going on in draft, I know we're going to talk about some of the draft. I know it's already happened, and we don't want to give up what's happened. Maybe on the second half, we'll talk about the first couple of guys that got picked, but I don't want to just try to kind of spoil it for people that are doing their things. But what I do want to touch on, I know we love a lot of sports, and there was some talk that one of the great broadcasters in the world of Major League Baseball, the great Vin Scully, had taken a fall at his home in Southern California, and I believe he's okay. I know everybody is kind of worried when someone falls down or gets hurt now. They think, oh my God, COVID-19. Well, no, there's no talk of that, but he did fall down. He's 92 years old. He was hospitalized, but they didn't tell anybody, and I guess he's going to be okay now. Big C, we don't want anything bad happening to anybody, but a voice that's been around for 67 years, guys going into the draft now, if they can last 5 years, great. But 67 years doing the same thing, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he was very fortunate in the career that he had as a broadcaster for the Dodgers, Charlton. Vin Scully also worked for the networks earlier in his career. And you think about the longevity that he possessed in that position. I mean, he was one of the iconic voices of broadcasting and will always be thought of in that light. I mean, when you get to that stage in life where he is in your 90s, you always have to make sure you take extra precautions in being safe and moving around because frigidity that you have in your bones and your body, you don't have the strength. So it's always nice to have someone around, a caregiver or a family member. Yeah,
he says he won't be doing any more sliding anymore, Big C, at least head first, so he still has a sense of humor. And again, he retired in 2016, a career which saw him work for the Dodgers 67 years. He began in 1950 when the team was located in Brooklyn. And then he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1982, received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016. And I know, just like the NFL draft, and we'll get on that too, I know Vin Scully and many other great broadcasters, I just wonder what advice would they give these young men, because not everybody makes it. Just because you're drafted doesn't mean you're going to stick. I wonder what advice Vin Scully would give them outside of just signing a big paycheck. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at broadcasters today, Charlton, and how times have changed over the years with the athletes, I mean, everybody's living on the hype that they're getting from various other broadcasters and organizations. And so as far as Vin Scully, he and any other professional would tell you to be professional about what you do.
Yeah.
Handle your business. Make sure you have the proper people around you. That's what it comes down to. Don't put yourself in positions that will possibly hinder your career.
Yeah.
That's the best advice you could give any young athlete.
Well, I want to ask you personally then. You don't have to give out all the information, but I know going back to your time and dealing with what a lot of the players are dealing with right now, Big C, I'm sure you had people that came to you and said, let me give you some advice. A lot of people want to prey on you. They want to give you advice, whether it's family or friends. What advice do you wish you had taken more of? Because as you get older, you get a little bit more wiser too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the difference between now and then, Charlton, the media has created so many differences in athletes than what we had in those days. Everything has changed, from workout regimens to nutrition regimens to social interaction regimens. You can't compare the two times to each other because life was much different, in America in the 70s versus it is in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard because you don't have structure with a lot of young athletes that you had in those days. Family values are not always there as they once were. So, when you're more guided by what goes on in the media and what your peers will say versus having other people that are close to you, it's really hard to guide someone.
Yeah, and I think I can go back to even when I was in college. The thing that I'm glad I listened to, and I still do to this day, I listened to the advice of my mother and my father when he was around. But just sometimes, like the whole world is doing the pause. You know how we do the Big C pause? Everybody's pausing now. I would say to young people, pause and just think before you do anything. And I hope that can make life a lot better for a lot of people. I do want to take the time to really think, something you were saying. It's almost like there are times you say things and they come true, just like you've been talking about the NFL and they're doing the draft and how they're benefiting COVID-19. I think you said just yesterday this thing with Tom Brady and I think Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, they're doing a golf charity for COVID-19. But we know the federal government can print a lot more money than anyone can give in for a golf charity, Big C. But the NFL, they're doing a draftathon to benefit COVID-19 relief for charities. And what you've been talking about, those frontline medical workers, there's going to be over 200 remote feeds to broadcast the virtual event. It's really nice that they're coming out and saying they want to benefit our frontline workers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, everyone should think about the frontline workers more than they think about anything else. You think about the show that's going on tonight with the NFL draft. This is a one-weekend event. Those frontline workers are there 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And people are not giving them a second thought because they only want to think about those people when they need those people, Charlton.
Yeah.
But there is a need for those people every day, even prior to this COVID pandemic that we have going on. Those frontline workers have always been there. And I think about them from the time when I was a kid to even now, just getting out of the hospital recently, how fortunate people are to be able to have these people to help them. So, having events and all of those things, those are great.
Yeah.
But these are some people that the government actually needs to step up for. I know every time you turn around, you got Congress passing a new bill for more billions of dollars to go into society.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a bill passed directly for those frontline workers, those hospital staff members, the first responders, where they're giving a huge bonus for what they sacrifice every day. And they sacrifice every day. And so when you think about those people and people want to go out and have a little event on television, it's nice to watch a sporting event to pump off a little steam.
Yeah.
But these people, when you think about the exhilaration that they deal with every day at being at work, no athlete could ever feel that.
No, never could. It's amazing how the athletes are about to become multimillionaires. At least some of the guys will. And then the nurses, they're saying, can we please get a mask and some gloves and some N95 masks? Ironically, as we talk about how it would be nice if we could give more money to our first responders, would you believe we were talking about this just yesterday? Maybe they're listening, but we were saying, do you know anyone who's actually gotten some of this money? This $350 billion, Big C. So today, I guess Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, she had announced that they want to have an oversight committee because, POTUS fired the first guys, and they want to have some Democrats and Republicans. There's some Democrats and Republicans that want to do it, but would you believe there are also a lot of Republican members of Congress, they don't want to do it. They say we already have oversight, not remembering that POTUS fired the guy. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you fight against oversight, it's like fighting, it's like voter obstruction.
Yeah.
You don't want the truth to be out. You don't want accuracy in America. And you would think that everyone says that this is the greatest nation in the world, but yet you have a nation who fights against equality in every way and culpability. And that's what it comes down with money. When you got people blocking others from wanting to know where the money is, then the culpability problem is what we have as a country.
Yeah.
And Republicans fighting against this because a lot of their constituents are getting the money, and they don't want that to come public.
Well, Kushner told us this is ours. This is our money, our PPEs. It's all fair and love and war. So the NFL, back to their draft-a-thon, I really appreciate that. I remember when I was growing up, I always saw Jerry Lewis, and he was doing telethons to raise money for so many different causes. Really appreciate that. So the NFL's been all about giving to the community. We've seen that they've been through hard times. A lot of people have been through hard times. And it's really nice when you have people that have the wherewithal. All they got to do is do what we're doing. I'm not saying they got to do what we're doing, but when they just, I'm telling you, we've been talking about it, and now they're doing it. I'm sure other people have too. I just haven't known much of it because they were all stuck on who's going to win a game and who's bigger, stronger, and faster. So this thing that the NFL is doing, I think all sports people are doing it, and no one can ever say anymore that sports and politics does not mix. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you can have all the fundraisers that you want, Charlton, but as of today, 26.5 million Americans have filed for unemployment.
Yeah.
26.5 million Americans. Those are the ones that were eligible for unemployment.
Yeah.
Because there were many of them that were ineligible prior to this pandemic, striking. So think about it. How many fundraisers you got to have as athletes versus the government doing the right thing of taking care of its citizens who have paid tax money for years and decades and never drew on the system. And so regardless of how many events you have, whether it's golf, whether it's tennis, anything, you cannot put enough events together to help out the 26.5 million Americans that have filed for unemployment over the last 5 weeks. We're not talking about this year, the last 5 weeks. So think about the number of Americans that were on unemployment prior to that.
Yeah.
But over the last 5 weeks, 26.5 million people. That's half the population of California, if you look at it on a national landscape.
Yeah.
And so, close to the population of the city of New York.
Yeah.
So as we look at Americans in need, that's where it is. The government has the ability to take care of its people, not find excuses and go out there and say, okay, get me a GoFundMe page to take care of this. This is the responsibility of the American government.
Yeah, it really is. And I know everybody has their own thoughts about that. And some people say we don't want to bail people out. I think your friend, Mitch McConnell, said let the banks, let the country, I think he said let the counties or the states go bankrupt as opposed to getting the bailout the way his state's been getting bailed out. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's my point about politicians. Mitch McConnell's the Senate leader out of the state of Tennessee. I believe it is Tennessee or Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky.
And his state receives more government benefits than the state of New York. When you think about it, New York pays in more, and more than what Tennessee does. But Tennessee benefits from it because of the population and the lack of job situations in the state.
Yeah.
But that shows the lack of empathy and responsibility of our Republican-led Senate to say just let states file bankruptcy. You realize if the state of New York filed bankruptcy, that we would really go into a depression in America? We're talking about the economic center of the world.
Yeah.
That's the state of New York. If they file bankruptcy, you think we're having hard economic times now? This country would have almost shut down because that is the banking and financial center of the world.
Yeah, that good old boy, he's from Kentucky. The good thing, the light at the end of the tunnel, is that he's getting some backlash, Big C. So not everybody's, just dropping down on their knees when he speaks a lot of times the way they do for POTUS. He's a sorry individual. He really is. It's amazing how he's able to last as long as he's lasted. But it's all fair in love and war, and that's why we have politics. I want to just get your thoughts on all the great athletes that have played college football. They played it at the highest level, and now everybody's wondering who's going to go where. We know the draft is already underway. We'll touch a little bit on that after the Big C pause. But I want to get your thoughts on which university. We always go back and forth, you and I. I've been telling you for a long time the West Coast plays the best football. In fact, I had a dream about how they could really figure out how to get 8 teams into the playoffs. They could have a Western Conference and an Eastern Conference like NBA does, and that way you guarantee they get the Power 5 in there plus 3 at-large teams. But I want to get your thoughts. Which university will have the most players selected in the first round tonight, Big C? Your thoughts?
Yeah, but if you make that 8-team playoff that you're talking about, that means you're going to have at least 2 teams, if not 3, in there with losing records. So you water down the product, and it's not as good as it should be. Getting into the playoffs should be based on merit. And like I keep saying, they're not going to expand the 4-team format. It's going to run for at least 8 more years, the 4-team format, because college football makes its money.
Yeah.
They don't need a couple more extra bowl games to make the money that they're already making. Those billions are already in the bank. Just like we talked about, if the season is not played this year, the Power 5 conferences will lose $4.2 billion. So that expansion is off the board. But, when you look at who's going to have the most players drafted from a team tonight,
yeah,
do we put the West Coast in that equation? Is there a team on the West Coast that has a dominant roster where you can say that 4 or 5, maybe 6 guys are going to come off of the board tonight from one of those schools there on the West Coast based on how they played this past year? My opinion is that you're going to have to go down into the South.
Yeah.
You're going to have to look at the SEC. When you talk about teams with the amount of players that will be drafted tonight overall, you got to look at LSU, the national championship.
Yeah.
You got to look at Alabama, who traditionally every year has 5 to 6, 7 players come off the board in the first round. You think about Nick Saban. Nick Saban is the only coach in college football to have a player taken in the first round in every position.
Yep.
If Tua goes in the first round tonight, he'll be the only coach in college football history to have a player go in the first round at every position on the team other than a specialist, kicker, punter. And, well, hell, those not even players.
No, they play
when we
too.
look at LSU and the depth that they had on their roster, I think you're going to flip a coin between LSU and Alabama. I think one of those teams will have 6 to 7 players go off the board tonight in the first round. I think Clemson will probably come in somewhere around third with, 3, maybe 4 players in the first round. But I think it's a toss-up between Alabama and LSU. One of them will have 6, and the other will have 7 come off the board in the first round.
Well, when you think about the draft and how people are looking at it and what they really need going into it, and again, we'll cover more in the second half, just talk about some of the draft that already went forward. But I know that talk about, Burrow, of course you have Tua. Now, I know a lot of good old boys, they've been jumping around on Tua and saying that they don't have a lot of faith, but obviously I think he's going to fare okay. It's just a matter of no matter where you get drafted, just like Tom Brady, what was he, a 6th round? He was 6th round pick, Big C. Joe Montana, I think he was always a 6th round pick. And so it always makes a big difference when you're thinking about it. But there's a guy out of Auburn, his name is Derek Brown. He's a defensive lineman. And that good old boy, I think he's going to be, I saw him play in the game against Oregon earlier in the Kickoff Classic down in Texas, I believe. And he really showed that he was NFL ready. I thought he was NFL ready at that time. I know you're big on the defensive side of the line, and without even telling about where they went, I just want to make sure your thoughts when you say the SEC has a lot of players. Is he someone that sticks out to you that every single game, he's going to be there making plays? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's one of the top defensive tackles in the draft here. He along with Ken Law out of South Carolina State, out of South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah.
We're talking about SEC football players, Charlton. And there's huge amount of dominant down linemen when you play in that conference because you play against a lot of run games and even the passing games are picked up in that conference.
Yeah.
Great athletes who have to compete every week against the best, in the game. And that's what you get out of somebody like Derek Brown. I mean, he could have came out last year out of college, but he wanted to come back, get another year of experience, improve his draft stock.
Yep.
And he's one of those players that should go in the top 10 tonight.
Let me get your thoughts on a team that really has not had success in many, many moons now. And I know John Gruden's there now with the Las Vegas Raiders, and they've had so much bad luck. Really, they have had a lot of bad luck over the last, I think they've only made the playoffs one time in the last 14 years, and they've been the I guess you could say that the most unstable franchise in the NFL lately. They keep firing coaches. They bring in Gruden now, and now they've lost their city, or at least they decided to leave the city of Oakland. And they're going to be down in the draft board also. I know Gruden's doing a lot of things to try to move the Oakland Raiders up. So if you think about it, what do you want to see the Raiders do as far as Gruden to show that the $100 million that he got was worth it, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, he's not just Gruden. You got Mike Mayock there also. And when you look at the Raiders, you got a lot of needs. And the biggest need is that you have with the Raiders is experience. Is one of the things they don't have. You can keep drafting young players and trying to make them fit into a mold that, doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
But when you draft, you have to draft for need. You have to draft the best athlete on the board.
Yeah.
That's where the Raiders may fall short tonight, not drafting the best athlete on the board. I mean, that old adage that, you draft for speed and speed kills health.
Yeah.
Everybody in the league can run,
It's fast.
period.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that Gruden is going to have to learn more of, is that you have to draft the best athlete available. I mean, there's no need for them reaching for a quarterback. You got two quarterbacks, a second rounder who was your starter. You got a former second overall draft pick who is your backup now. So they're pretty stacked at the quarterback position. It'd be a waste for them to spend the money on a quarterback. What they need to do is get them a game-breaking wide receiver.
Yeah.
They need another solid cornerback and a stud linebacker. That's where the Raiders' true needs are right now.
Yeah, obviously Gruden will mess it up anyway, and they'll blame somebody else. Before we get into the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, I want to get your thoughts on everybody has been in the hunt for a franchise quarterback. The same way you guys hunt for those wild boars down in the South Big C, they've been hunting for franchise quarterbacks too. In the last 20 years, how many number one overall picks at quarterback have actually been able to go and take their team to the Super Bowl? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about this, and this is always the hype going into the draft.
Yep.
Got to get a franchise quarterback. In the last 20 NFL drafts, 17 quarterbacks have gone first overall.
Yep.
17. So when you think about that. And so that's a long stretch when you're looking for a quarterback that's going to get you to the Super Bowl. Generally, they go to a very bad team being number one overall.
Yeah.
But in that, Charlton, only 4 of those quarterbacks in the last 20 years have made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So when you think about saying, I got to draft a franchise quarterback in the first round, it's like now teams don't spend the money on a running back in the first round. Still, they're expendable.
Yeah.
We can wait to the second and third round and put the money on a running back because we know he's going to be black generally. And so when I think about those quarterbacks that have made it to the Super Bowl, the last quarterback drafted number one overall that made it to the Super Bowl was Jared Goff, who lost the Super Bowl a couple of years ago to the New England Patriots.
Yep.
Prior to that, it was Cam Newton, who lost the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
And you have to go back a long ways prior to Cam Newton to a quarterback being drafted first overall. And people don't realize how far you got to go back. Guy's name, Eli Manning.
Yeah.
Eli Manning went to 2 of them.
Yeah.
So taking that crapshoot on a quarterback first overall in the draft, thinking that guy is going to take you to the promised land, the chances of that are real slim. So you really have to do your homework if you're going to take a quarterback and say, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah.
Is that quarterback going to be around long enough for that team to develop?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. When did that happen as far as everybody wants us? They say defense wins championships. That was a mantra back in the 70s and maybe even 80s with the 85 Bears. And then at some point in time, everybody's saying you got to find a quarterback to win you a Super Bowl. And as you just mentioned, they haven't had a lot of success being number one draft picks. Do you recall, was there a time when they changed from that mantra of defense wins championships to we got to pay a quarterback $100 million? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, defenses have always won championships. If you go back to the days of the AFL when it was just lights out offense. It was a league that just threw the ball all over the place. I know a lot of modern people will still remember Eric Coryell down in San Diego with Dan Fouts. This was the first greatest show on turf prior to the Rams. They did it also. They just never won a Super Bowl. But, I think things started looking different when you talked about the steel curtain in Pittsburgh, how they built the team through defense. Offense was, the accomplishment. They came along for the ride when the steel curtain had the defense. You talked about doomsday defense in Dallas.
The Dallas Cowboys.
Defense started to become a mantra. The no-name gang down in Miami.
Yeah.
And so as you looked at that over the years and people started to say, okay, we got to put some intimidating people together to go out and win championships. So you started to see that swing back in the late 70s where you started putting defenses together. And then, people don't remember how good the Dallas Cowboys defense was during that dynasty when they won their 3 Super Bowls. Everyone thinks about the triplets on offense, but that defense that Jimmy Johnson put together in Dallas was a hell of a defense. Everybody will always remember the 85 Bears, but when you go back and you look at championships over the years, you think about how Reggie White changed the mantra and the mindset of Green Bay. Green Bay didn't win until Reggie White got there. Brett Favre was already in town.
Yeah,
so when Reggie White showed up and put a defensive mentality together in Green Bay, they started winning.
Yeah.
And so as you looked over the years, and even in the Super Bowls, how it proves out, it's the team that goes in with the dominant defense.
Yeah.
They generally walk away with the championship.
Defense wins championships. We'll take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, we're going to talk more about some players that are going to be saying, thank God I got drafted tonight. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network, Universe iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on 2 apps that I love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate that. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Love giving out our Veterans Crisis Hotline. Make sure you call that 800-273-8255. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T U-First, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And when you call out to them, let them know that Big C sent you. The goal is to put 100 real estate brokers together. List your properties on TV just like McDonald's. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams do it. And you can watch TV work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. When you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you. Really look forward to that. So here we come. Up on the draft, we know some players have already been taken. But before getting into that, I do want to let people know your friend Todd McShay, he was dealing with some of the same thing you're doing from COVID-19. So really wishing him nothing but the best. I know a lot of people in the sports world that I've watched over the years. I don't know him personally, but I would hope that everybody can just realize that we're all, it's a small universe in the sports world, Big C, and I really wish him nothing but the best. He will not be a part of the NFL draft tonight. He's been a mainstay on the networks for years, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, this lets you know that this horrific situation we're going through in America, it doesn't spare anybody, Charlton. Everybody's touchable. But with what's happening with Todd McShay, this should be a wake-up call for everybody in sports.
Yeah.
Every broadcast company out there. When they talk about social distancing and how we got to get the games played again.
No, we don't.
When you're broadcasters that are sitting in your studios and are not sitting there hugging and dropping sweat on each other, but they're getting COVID-19.
Yeah.
And as we have this mental rush to say we got to get the sports played again, and here are these broadcasters practicing social distancing, and when they get too close to somebody, all of a sudden they end up with this COVID.
Yeah.
So as the draft is going to take place tonight, and I'm glad that they're doing it all satellite and they're not bringing everybody together.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're most likely not going to be holding mini camps next week for any of the teams. By Wednesday, everybody would be in a mini camp.
Yeah.
This lets you know the serious nature of this disease that we're dealing with. As much as we love football, as we love live sports, there also has to be a reality check in America.
Oh, yeah.
That we love life more than we love sports. And that sports will be back. It's on a pause. But we have to get this COVID thing under wraps first before we continue talking about when are they going to play again.
Yeah.
It's when are they going to have a cure.
Yeah.
Sports will never go away. But we got to get this COVID to go away.
You know, Big C, I love the fact that I really do love when you and I do our show, because as we started 5 years ago, it's just real talk. And I know oftentimes, I grew up watching back in the day, the Sports Center, especially Berman when he was doing his thing, Chris Berman from back in the day. And then just when I realized, going back to even, I think it was Irva Cross, Jane Kennedy, I believe, was the first African-American woman that did broadcast work. And then the great Irv Cross back in the day. And I think about this. Life goes on outside of sports. And for many of the networks that were been maybe across the current from what Big C Sports was doing, because you and I, we were just talking about the political side of life as well as sports. How we can use both sides of our brain. And sometimes I was a little bit dismayed that one of the programs, like an ESPN, that I grew up watching over the years, they took some of our brightest people and they made them seem like they were just linear thinking, like they could only read you the score and who won a game and who's bigger, stronger, and faster. And I hated that because there's so many well-read, intelligent people that have access to a microphone. And before I turn it to you, I've always thought that as life goes by, and we hope he recovers, but you can't take any day for granted. And there's a lot of time where a lot of black men will watch the mothership before they will watch the news program that may keep their family safe. And so my pushback on the mothership is oftentimes they make people appear like they were dumb. Only talk sports, let's have fake arguments, and don't talk about anything that's real. And to hear them saying that one of their top broadcasters has been stricken with COVID, I think Doris Burke was the other, but how do they keep pushing for games when they're all getting sick and they're not even sitting next to each other? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, and that's what's been my cry the whole time. Everybody's talking about you got to play. Me personally, I don't want to see football played this year. I honestly don't. As dear it is to me in my heart
health is important.
My success in life, I don't want to see football played this year. I don't want to see any other sport played in the year 2020. And people talk about, well, we got to have an outlet, a release. If you can't go to the grocery store, if you can't go to a hair salon, if you can't go to a park, what the hell are you going to be doing sitting in an arena packed with thousands of hot other people, Charlton? Yeah. So as we talk about in America, social distancing, taking care of yourself, being healthy, the responsibility comes down to the billionaires right now.
Yeah.
Not the millionaires, not the thousandaires, but it comes down to the billionaires. That is the hope of America.
Yeah.
Is how responsible are those billionaire owners and broadcast companies going to be for the health and welfare of the rest of America?
Yeah.
So, but if you keep egging somebody on, just like some of these governors say, well, I'm going to open up the state. I don't give a damn about the science.
Right.
I got to get these people back to work. Okay, people start going back to work, fine. 2 weeks later, people start dying. And what you're going to say, oh, well, you know, this happens?
Yeah.
That's basically the mantra and the mindset that people are taking.
Yeah.
I've dealt with sports for decades. Decades I've dealt with sports as a player, as a broadcaster. And now that people are saying you have to have it to live. No. What are we doing now without sports, without games being played? In the last 2 months, there's been no games played on television.
No.
Has that altered people's lives? Not the games, not the lack of games. That's not what has altered people's lives, Charlton. Life has to go on. But without life, you can't put fans in the stands.
Amen.
And then when you talk about putting games on, if you haven't been working in 4 or 5 months, how many people can afford to go to the game?
How many people can afford to go to the game? And so there's one more thing that I want to say this because it's so important. And it's almost like the sunshine. Like the sunshine, we all need sunshine. And I know POTUS is saying if you go out in the sunshine, that it will kill the coronavirus. That's just dumb. That's not
he
even
also
scientific.
Said if you inject yourself with a sanitizer,
oh my goodness,
it will kill kill the germs. Just like that oxychloroquine that he was talking about.
Yeah.
That 22% of the people took it have died.
Yeah.
And he and Fox News pronounced that every day that it was a game changer, and people needed to go out and start taking it.
Yeah.
This was a drug that was meant for something else. It was developed for other things, not COVID-19. But here it is. He and Fox News are advertising it, and it costs people their lives. So when you think about Fox News, a news outlet, telling people to go out and take it, they're actually responsible in a liability lawsuit. People can go back and sue them because they were advertising it every day, demanding that people take it. The president said take it, you should take it. And when you think about 22% of the people who took it died, you can't have that. So as we look at the president and the false information that he's sending out, and that's what people have to tell the truth about. He's sending out false information every day.
Yeah.
This false information is, without being vetted, is going to cost people their lives.
And you
are not a medical professional. You know nothing about this. No more than I do. I know nothing about it, other than having it.
Yeah.
And I thank the great medical care professionals who took care of me every day, effortlessly. They come in and they made sure that I survived.
Yeah.
And we have a president giving people false information that will not survive.
Well,
and if you look at his press conferences, if you go against him, you're not going to be in the next press conference.
Isn't that amazing? And I think it's so prescient right now. because, again, as we've talked, I'm not saying we're right about everything, but a lot of times things are just they're by your gut or sometimes intuition. But the thing that I love saying about what we do every day, we're not doctors or scientists, but we invoke people to follow science and doctors. And a lot of people wait until they have a calamity like this and they start doing a segment on it. But I still watch the mothership at times, and I just feel like guys are wasting their time talking about things that mean nothing. And maybe if we could all spend more time just invoking science. And I mean, I think that there's a guy by the name of Seth Markin, an ESPN vice president in production. He said in a statement that he's a widely respected member of the family and that he has our continued well wishes and unwavering support. He doesn't need your well wishes. He doesn't need your unwavering support. He needs you guys to do what Big C Sports has been doing. Start talking about science and having programs on where people can understand that science will save our lives, not giving somebody well wishes, not giving them unwavering support, as we're begging to get more black athletes, college and pro, out there on the gridiron again so we can be entertained. One of their own fallen victim, and they're yet to do shows on science outside of maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you're not going to get everybody to go out there and do a show on science. You're not going to get everybody to do healthcare shows.
Yeah.
But you would think the responsibility of the sports broadcast networks to be more understanding and compassionate,
yes,
and concentrate on those athletes who have contacted COVID.
Yep.
There's dozens of athletes, professional and collegiate, that have contacted this disease. And these are the people they need to be concentrating on. I understand the draft is a once-in-a-year event that goes on, and you want to pay a lot of attention to it. But for the past 2 months, you think about the number of professional athletes that have contacted COVID. This is the reason why the NBA shut down.
Yeah.
The NHL shut down. And the WNBA and all other sports, baseball, because players were contacted with this. They tested positive. These are the people that you need to have on that you're talking about, trying to find out and get other Americans to understand the importance of life over athletics.
Yep.
How important it is to be healthy. How important it is to be concerned and care about these people in that light, not because they can perform, but because what they're going through and their families going through.
Yeah.
And so until people look at things from that perspective, Charlton, and that's all the broadcast networks.
Yeah.
Go talk to the players who have contacted COVID. Do interviews with them. Ask them what they did to defeat that, how they got through it. I know a lot of people, especially in the NFL, remember the great tackle Tony Baselli, who played down at USC.
USC, yeah.
And, first-round draft pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He and his family got the disease. And Tony was talking about he thought he was going to die. This is a huge man. We're talking about somebody who's 6'7", 325 pounds as a player.
Yeah.
Who felt he was in the fight for his life and did not think that he was going to survive at some point. And you think about the pressure that puts on individuals and their family. He's married. He has 5 kids. His 2 sons caught the disease also when they came back from college in Colorado. His wife and 3 daughters did not catch it. But to think about that puts a perspective when you talk to people like that everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
And understand. You know, if you ask him about what he feels about being drafted, the first couple of draft picks years ago out of USC to Jacksonville versus, defeating COVID, Charlton, he'll tell you the NFL meant nothing to him compared to what beating COVID meant.
Yep.
And that's what people need to understand. We all have a longing for sports, but we have a longing for life. And people who have been contacted by this disease and had to fight through it, and everybody's not going to win the battle, will let you know how important life is.
Yeah, it really is. And I wish everybody well, but I wish that people understand science too, so we can pass on how to get healthier. Before I ask you a few things about the draft that's going on, Big C, because it's important, and I know we're probably the only sports show in the universe that will talk about things that are relevant when it comes to our political leaders. So the White House pushes back. They push on unproven theories about warm weather slowing the virus. Dr. Fauci said that don't assume that the virus will slow when the weather gets warmer. So when we have people saying let's play sports in Arizona or Florida, they have people in Florida pass away too. And that knucklehead of a governor in Nevada, she was saying open up the casinos if people get sick. We've had viruses before. That's just misinformation. So hopefully more people than just Big C Sports will push back on that too. Big C, I want to get your thoughts in the final few minutes. I know we don't want to give out too much about who got picked where and how things are going. But with all this talk of Joe Burrow, and I know you love the quarterbacks down in the South, I actually think, and it might be going against the current, I still think Tua is a better quarterback than Burrow. I think Burrow didn't even beat out when he was at Ohio State. He didn't make the starting team at Ohio State, so he went down to LSU and found better receivers. But I think, just give me your assessment of Burrow. Do you think when he goes to the NFL, he's not going to find a lot of defensive backs that haven't seen his angle and how he throws the ball? Do you expect the same kind of success? Or would they be more wise having him sit the bench for at least a year to learn? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, every quarterback that's drafted, and we talked about that earlier, 16 quarterbacks drafted in the first round overall in the last 2 decades, and only 3 of them have made the Super Bowl, 4 times between the 3. So it's about where you're going and the personnel that a team has. Joe Burrow, when you think about what he did in college last year, 50 touchdown passes, something we've never seen, over 76% completion ratio. The guy understands the game. That's the difference, having an understanding of the game. You have to understand when you draft a quarterback, it's about mental capacity more than anything else. We've seen a lot of great athletes that's been drafted, and like I said, 16 over the last 20 years, drafted in the first round. But it's the mental capacity that allows them to process to get to where he is. I mean, he didn't fit the Ohio State system. That was the biggest thing about him. When you look at the type of quarterbacks that Ohio State wanted to deal with, they wanted to deal with spread quarterbacks who were multi-dimensional that could run also. But, when he went to LSU and got in a pro-style offense, he flourished. Does he have the best arm of all the quarterbacks coming out of the draft? No, he doesn't. The best arm coming out of all the quarterbacks is Jacob Eason out of Washington. And he'll probably go in the 3rd round. But he has the best prototype arm of all the quarterbacks coming out of the draft. Everybody has the concerns about Tua. His mobility may hurt him over time.
Really?
Because he's had the multi-leg injuries that he's had over the last couple of years at Alabama. He's had 3 different leg operations. So those are the things that concern quarterbacks. But he also has a safety net the way that the NFL is built now, is that you can't pound a quarterback into the ground like you can in college football.
Yeah, and at the same time, the sexy quarterback now in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes because of his run-pass option. Also, Lamar Jackson run-pass option. He can pull it down and throw it or run it. Same thing with Kyler Murray down in Arizona. So you take the top, even Watson down in Houston. And you can even say Russell Wilson for that matter. Maybe 5 years ago, your good old boy Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott. You don't have that run-pass option when you go to Burrow, Big C. Do you think that's going to hurt them? Because that's the trend of the teams that are winning, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he possesses more mobility than a lot of people give him credit for. I would still put him in the lines when you talk about mobility closer to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes doesn't look to run. He will run as an option. But he's looking to buy time. And that's one of the things that we saw a lot in the development of Joe Burrow this past year at LSU. He moved in the pocket to buy time. It's like Tom Brady. He didn't run, but he didn't get sacked often either because he understood the angles of the game. And once you have that peripheral vision as a quarterback, that is the difference maker. Know when to step up 1 foot, in the pocket, whether to slide to the left or to the right. That's what Joe Burrow possesses. You don't just go out and throw for 5,000 yards in a college football season doing guesswork.
Yeah, now let me ask you for a guy. I hope it doesn't make you too upset. I know you like duck, but you like your duck well cooked or maybe medium. I know when you eat a lot of duck down south, Big C. But what is it that a lot of good old boys that see the kid out of Oregon, Justin Herbert, size, he's a tall guy, but so what? As far as speed, he's not the fastest guy. He's more, to me, like an Aaron Rodgers without the accuracy. What do people not like about him? Because they're trying to push him as being a guy that's going to develop well in the NFL. What do you see in his flaws? Because you were right about him when they played Auburn. I thought you were wrong, but you actually turned out to be right. What is it about him that alarms you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, he's the same size quarterback as Jason Eason, as I just told you, out of the University of Washington. They both grew up in the Pacific Northwest. The thing with Justin Herbert, his Achilles heel is his accuracy outside the pocket. As long as he's a straight drop-back passer, the guy can sling it all over the field. I mean, he has no problems. He reminds me a lot of Dan Marino when he's standing in the pocket. But when you force him to move just like Dan Marino, his accuracy drops way down. Once he gets outside the tackle box, he's completing about 40% or less of his passes. That has to bring you some concern in the NFL because not too many offenses are built where the quarterback can afford to sit in the pocket. You know, Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning, you know, Eli retired, Phillip moved on to Indianapolis. I think he may lack a lot of the skills that he once had before, but that's one of the things. How can you throw the ball on the run? And when you think about Oregon, and when he was forced out of the pocket, he became a very inaccurate quarterback.
Yeah, I think even in the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin, they won that game because he was able to run against the Wisconsin defense that was, I thought, a little bit faster than what they showed in the Rose Bowl. But I'm not that sold on Herbert. I think he will be a decent player, but I don't see him as a guy that's going to. I mean, they had 2 chances to win a national championship, and he couldn't get first downs. And you got to keep the drive alive when it comes to that. Before we close out, I'm going to run into the Big C. You know, I'm going to close out the show, but I want to get your thoughts on some things that you could update as we go. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the 2 apps that I love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. So, Big C, I know getting into the last 7 minutes or so of the program today, I know I really am so excited that we at least have the NFL draft. I don't want to give out too much about what's happening because it's already in the way when we started the show tonight. And I know a lot of guys are looking at ways that's going to make their lives better. But I want to just kind of go freestyle and ask you your thoughts on what you're expecting to see more of as we go forward tonight with the NFL draft. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you know, everybody is, you know, up in arms about who should be the #1 pick overall, whether it should be Joe Burrow out of LSU or Chase Young out of Ohio State. You got to realize both of those kids grew up in Ohio.
Yeah.
So the Cincinnati Bengals, the last time I checked, I think they're still in Ohio also.
Yeah.
And so people saying one over the other. But you have to evaluate it from this perspective. And I know a lot of people gave a lot of praise to the kid out of Ohio State last year, Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
And I think by the time the year ended up, he had maybe 7.5 or 8 sacks.
Yeah.
To be a superstar defensive lineman means you have to have double-digit sacks. And to be the greatest defensive lineman in the game during that time, you have to get at least 16. You got to average a sack a game. We don't see that often, averaging a sack a game.
Yeah.
But if you average a sack a game as a defensive lineman in the NFL, you're the defensive MVP of the league. If you average a touchdown pass a game as a quarterback, that's 16 on the season, you won't be around long. You have to be effective if you're going to be the first person overall taken in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And that's what you can get from a quarterback. You can get you a guy that can throw you 26 to 35 touchdown passes a year.
Yep.
That makes him a superstar. Versus when you get a defensive lineman that you can neutralize. That quarterback's going to have the ball in his hands 60 times a game.
Yeah.
That defensive lineman is hoping to make 6 plays a game. So you go with the quarterback. And Cincinnati should go with Joe Burrow tonight, make him the first overall pick. Whether he starts or not, you have Andy Dalton there.
Yeah.
Well, are they going to keep Andy Dalton?
Probably
That's
not.
the biggest question.
Yeah.
Because if they're going to keep Andy Dalton, then Joe Burrow is going to sit and learn for a little while, just like he did when he was at Ohio State. Think about it. He sit and learned while he was at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And then when he got his opportunity at LSU over the next 2 years, he really grew. But that growth came from being able to sit at Ohio State for a couple of years prior to being thrown into the fire.
Yeah, okay. So we know that we'll just give out, Burrow's thought. We know that he went first, and the Bengals got him out of for LSU, and obviously he's coming back home. But this is a Bengals team. When they got rid of Marvin Lewis after being in the playoffs, I think 8 years of his tenure there, and the thing that I see differently, and then maybe I'm different, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've ever played in snow in Louisiana. You're going to get some snow in Ohio. This is a guy that had a lot of fleet-footed receivers at LSU, but they were not running deep routes in the snow. They're going to get some inclement weather in Ohio. Would that be a factor at all in your thoughts?
No, it hasn't affected any quarterback at any time. You got to look at Peyton Manning. Did it snow in Tennessee when he was playing there prior to going to Indianapolis? Tom Brady, yes, he played in snow up in Michigan. But when you look at quarterbacks all over the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, how much snow did he get down in Texas?
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, how much did he get in Louisville? So when you think about where a quarterback came from, Aaron Rodgers, I believe he played at Cal. He went to Green Bay. It doesn't get any worse than it does there.
Yeah.
So the climate of a quarterback, where he goes as a professional, doesn't mean anything. You prepare for the elements that you play in, and you see that all the time. Teams draft players from hot weather environments and end up in a cold, inclement weather. It's about whether you want to be a professional all the time or whether you just want to be a teammate.
Yeah, and I know we talk about the life that's going to change for a lot of the young men. There's also players that will not get picked that maybe they were expecting to be picked. And I've heard a program that I heard Nick Saban, he was on earlier, and I heard him saying he wants all of his athletes to get an education because that's important. That's the only thing that you can really control. But at the same time, if you have a chance to go into the NFL, you just want to have your eyes wide open. There's a business side of it too. I know we don't always talk about that in the mainstream Big C, but the business side, it goes back to the question that I asked you earlier. What things do you wish you had learned or listened to after you had maybe heard them and maybe told people, well, I know what I'm doing, I'm old enough now, and anything you would have learned differently? What more advice would you give to these young players? A lot will become instant millionaires. Any salient advice that you could give them, irrespective of being drafted or not? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, like I said earlier, I don't think you can give these young people advice who have not had a proper upbringing in life. That's the key. It's about how you're brought up. I mean, because once you get the money in your hand, it's yours. You got to think about that first paycheck that you got, regardless of what the job was that you had. It was your money. It wasn't your parents' money. It wasn't your friend's money. It had your name on the check.
Yeah.
And so no one could tell you what to do with the money realistically. You just hope that you have a strong enough foundation as an individual to guide you through these things, because as we look at the NFL, the guys that are getting drafted tonight are going to make money.
Yeah.
They're going to be set for life. The lowest paid guy will be the guy drafted 32nd overall.
Yeah.
And his contract value will probably be about $18 million in total.
Yeah.
Versus Joe Burrow's contract tonight, which will be worth $35 million in total.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, you're set for life. It's just a matter of the structure of family you had to get you that point. Some people can get around that not having that family structure.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest thing. I mean, you can go out and tell anybody anything you want, just like everybody listens to the sports shows.
Yeah.
And they're listening, they're thinking that they're getting the proper advice from the sports show.
Yeah.
But it comes down to execution, just like in a play. It comes down to execution of what you do and the foundation that you were grown up with.
Yeah, and I just wish them all well. There's going to be a lot of things that go on, different people being traded, and then you have the people. I mean, are we even going to get football this year? I just know that science, no matter what people say, I know we have fun talking about sports and politics and even hit on religion sometimes. I just hope and pray that people stay informed about what we can do, washing our hands. That social distancing, it seems to work. I think even Georgia's pushed back to May now because POTUS got involved instead of saying, hey, go out and see what happens. I think they're pushed back to May now. So that gives, science some more time and prevents people from being hurt. But everybody has to at least get their own information and do their best they can with that. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'd like to extend a congratulations to all the men tonight, all these young men tonight who are going to have a life-changing experience by being drafted into the NFL and becoming a legitimate professional athlete. But also, once again, I'd like to send out my thanks and thoughts to all the first responders and healthcare workers here in America and around the world for the admirable job that you're doing every day, making sure that people have an opportunity to recover from this COVID disease and any other afflictions that they may have.
Amen to that. And we hope, again, everybody keep an eye on science. I know you want to know who won the game. I know you want to know who got drafted first. But keep your family safe, the elderly people in your family, the younger people too. And it starts with you. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.